Hello watch enthusiasts, this is OJ Watley coming to you live from What You Want, here to talk about another great couple of Panerai watches. So before we begin, just wanted to remind you all that if you like our videos, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, What You Want Inc., so you can receive updates on our most recently posted videos. Additionally, this watch, as well as our entire inventory of watches, can be viewed on our website by going to www.whatyouwant.com. So today, I'm here with a couple of very cool Panerai watches, and what I would consider a couple of very often misunderstood Panerai watches. So today I'm here to talk to you about the PAM 449 Radiomir S.L.C 3 days special edition. And I'm going to talk to you also about the PAM 425, also a Radiomir S.L.C, but not the special edition. And so the reason I call these often misunderstood watches is because while they're very similar, they're indeed very different watches. First and foremost, there are a lot of differences, but there's also some similarities between these two watches. So I'm here today to talk to you about the similarities and the differences between these two watches, and really what makes one a 449, whereas what makes the other a 425. So just to begin, the PAM 449 was a special edition watch launched for the O series. As a special edition, that means Panerai reserves the right to only issue this watch for one production year. So there will never be another PAM 449 other than the O series made in 750 pieces. So there you have the first piece of information you need to know. As a special edition, this was made for only 1 year in 750 pieces. Comes with the big oversized special edition box set with the rolled parchment certificate scroll that is individually numbered to match the watch. The PAM 425 is a regular edition model, which means Panerai reserves the right to make it year over year, and indeed, since the O series, this has been a current production watch in the Panerai catalog, made in around 1,500 pieces each year. So these watches are considered the historic tribute Radiomir models. In fact, these watches were fashioned after the original 2533 Panerai Rolex Radiomir, which featured that same SLC Radiomir dial. Now, SLC actually stands for Siloso Loro Corso, which essentially translates to slow-moving torpedo. The slow-moving torpedo was a manned torpedo that was made infamous by the use of the Royal Italian Navy, while fitted with Panerai instruments such as these watches and compasses and depth gauges. And basically it was a torpedo that was manned by a Special Forces underwater diver, who again was wearing typically Panerai instruments and gear, and maybe a quarter mile before they reached their target, the divers would hop off the torpedo and swim back to their ship while the target would get bombarded with the torpedoes, and they were able to sink ships while they're in port, very tactly and very mysteriously. It was really underwater trench warfare. And so Panerai had this watch made as a prototype in 1925, and the original prototype, of which this watch is absolutely almost a dead ringer for in terms of aesthetics, again featured that same 47mm stainless steel cushion shape, the Radiomir case, with the oversized winding crown and the wire lug attachments so that you could attach the strap to it. This watch is considered a very faithful reproduction of that original 2533, and in fact that SLC dial, or what we call the minimalist sandwich dial, was really reserved exclusively and used almost exclusively in that one model, the 2533. The 2533 was a historic model in the milestone of Panerai history because it was really their first time they made an instrument by mil-spec military specifications for a Special Forces military group, the Royal Italian Navy. But moreover, it signified the beginning of a relationship with Rolex, where Rolex, in an unparalleled move before or since, would allow Panerai to use their cases, their movements, their dials, and essentially have carte blanche to do whatever they wanted with these watches, including put their own names on the dial. Again, a relationship which is unparalleled in the history of Rolex, never before and never yet to be repeated in the history of Rolex. So this is really what signified that original relationship with Rolex and put Panerai on the map, so to speak. So the biggest differences between these two watches, aside from the fact that one is a special edition, the 449, the 425 is a current edition. The 425 has been made as a current edition since the O series, all the way up into the Q and the R series that we're into today. You know, you look at these watches, the first thing you see is that one of these watches features the blued steel hands, while the other watch features the gold hands. In fact, the blued steel hands were the original hands that were featured on that Rolex 2533 Radiomir that was made for the Royal Italian Navy. So that's why this is considered more of a faithful reproduction, the 449, rather than the 425. So the blued steel hands is something absolutely that is a big differentiating aesthetic. Additionally, if you look on the PAM 425, and I'm going to try to hold it a little closer to the camera and maybe get a little glare so you can see it, but there's actually that black seal torpedo logo just above the 6 o'clock marker on the dial on the 425. Again, that's the black seal logo. That's the SLC, the slow-moving torpedo, manned by two underwater divers. And again, I'm going to try to get a better focus on this. Let's see. It's really hard. Let's see. And of course, you can go to our website to see better photos and more close-ups of that figurine. I'm not sure how well it's coming out in this. But rest assured, at 6 o'clock, there is a black on black, almost in relief, like bas-relief logo of that black seal. Additionally, you know, both of these watches have engravings in between the lugs. Something also that's very unique for these the Radiomirs. So on the 425 at 6 o'clock, it's stamped OP6837, whereas on the PAM 449 Special Edition, it's stamped vintage. And on the 12 o'clock side, it's stamped PAM 425, and on the 449, it's stamped PAM 449. So the biggest difference, again, is the fact that on the 449 Special Edition, it's stamped vintage, again, to commemorate that this is really much more of a faithful reproduction. Additionally, and it's not easy to see just by looking at them, the PAM 449 actually features an original plexiglass crystal, whereas the PAM 425 features a sapphire crystal. You can't really tell by looking at it, but if you hold it to your forehead, the 425 crystal is cold to the touch, which indicates it as a sapphire crystal, whereas the PAM 449 is absolutely a plexiglass crystal. Additionally, with the special edition box set, you get a replacement crystal that if this one gets scratched up, you can send it to Panerai and have the replacement crystal installed for you. Also, the PAM 449 comes on the original Radiomir Ranger strap. It's a leather strap in sort of a dark brown, not quite an antique brown, but more like a butterscotch brown. So they call this the Radiomir Ranger strap. It's a leather strap. It's a smooth leather, not porous leather, and has a kind of a shine to it, almost like a Horween. Whereas on the 425, the strap that they use on that watch, or issue on that watch, is the Assolutamente, which is sort of that aged, distressed, kind of tannish calfskin strap. Let's see, additionally, you know, differences between these watches, aside from the straps, the fact that one's a special edition, one has blued steel hands, one has gold hands. If you look at the case backs, they both sport the Brevettato stamp on the case back, which again is that tribute to their historic vintage. They have the Brevettato and of course the Officine Panerai. They're both powered by the P3000, the 3-day power reserve manual winding. This is an in-house movement made by Panerai. But in fact, if you look at the original Rolex movement, this movement was inspired in terms of its design and its aesthetics to look very much like that original Rolex movement, although the original Rolex movement was certainly not a 3-day power reserve. Let's see. Additionally, on the PAM 425, you have the 1,000 meters mark on this. Both of these watches, interestingly, where you have the OP number, you have the BB number, serial number essentially, on the ring. You actually have the edition number in the corner of the case on the edge, which is typical numbering for Panerais. Although most Panerais, they're numbered on all 4 of those corners and nothing is on the ring. In this case, there is the BB number, the serial number on the ring, and the edition numbers in the corners there. They both feature the original Pre-Vendome style, what I call bottle opener Pre-Vendome style tang buckle in stainless steel. And they both feature the same oversized sort of onion-shaped winding crown. In terms of collectability, the PAM 449, I would say, is infinitely, more collectible, only because from a supply perspective, there's only 750 pieces of these watches. There's only 750 pieces out there in existence ever made. Whereas the PAM 425, like I said, is a current production model. It's been made every year since the O series. So O, P, O, P, Q, and now we're into the R series. So you're looking at 4 production years at 1,500 pieces per year. So let's see, additional comparisons and contrasts to this watch. Both of these watches feature the Radiomir Panerai logo engraved on the dial. And again, as we talked about that SLC dial, what's really unique about that SLC dial is it is a minimalist dial. The Radiomir Panerai is not stamped on the dial, rather it is engraved into the dial, and in fact the font of the Radiomir Panerai is larger than that on any other watch that has the Radiomir Panerai logo on it. It's actually taller and fatter and wider than you'll see the Radiomir or the Panerai logo where it's stamped into like the Luminar 1950 vintage pieces like the 372, for example. What you'll see if you compare those two is that the Radiomir Panerai is much bolder and larger on the 449 and on the 425 than on the 372 or the 423 or some of those other 47mm vintage re-edition models. Let's see. I think that really covers it, In the world of Panerai, being a regular edition versus being a special edition can mean a lot in terms of resale, in terms of rarity, and in terms of the supply. And again, what you'll see if you look at this watch on eBay or Chrono24 is that probably for every, 10 to 12 425s, you might see one PAM 449. I was super excited to have both of these watches at the same time because I don't think ever before in the history of Panerai have we ever had a 425 and a 449 at the same time to be able to do a hands-on video comparing and contrasting and being able to look at these two watches at the exact same time. Being able to see, that they are essentially, the same case, the same winding crown, and that the crystals actually look almost identical, although the one on the 449 is plexiglass, where the one on the 425 is sapphire. So that's about it. I hope you guys found this educational and informing. Again, I find it a real treat to be able to have both of these watches at the same time, to be able to do a hands-on side-by-side review of both of these watches. Both of these watches are available on our website. You can go to www.watchyouwant.com to view these watches in much better resolution and much more detail than you can see in video. Additionally, if you like our videos, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Watch You Want Inc., so you can receive updates of all of our most recently posted videos. I really appreciate you taking your time to view these videos, so thank you so much for your time, and as always, wear your watches in the very best of health. This is O.J. Watley for Watch You Want, signing off. Have a great day.